Thanks for the invitation, first of all. And as mentioned, I would like to give you a brief overview about our approach on the coordinated procurement of grid losses in Austria. Content is the coordinated procurement of grid loss in Austria. Which kind of procurement regime have we set up and have we developed? I would like to show some details of our concept as well, of course. Then some of the processes, associated risk management standards we have set up, what kind of IT systems, and some words regarding implementation, and also some experience and is there recommendation from my point of view. First of all, the starting point. Before 2010 in Austria, all system operators, TSOs and DSOs, they have procured their grid losses by themselves. And finally, E-Control, the Austrian regulator, has set up an incentive scheme in order to come up with a coordinated approach to procure the grid losses. And finally, E-Control has initiated in 2009 a consultation for options of a common procurement of grid losses. And the outcome was that we, as the Austrian transmission system operator, offered to run such a coordinated procurement of grid losses. And in 2010, finally, we started with that coordinated approach I would like to show right now. Main figures of the public consultation. The outcome of that public consultation issued by E-Control was, well, it should be a coordinated approach, a centralized approach of procurement of grid losses. There shall be a procurement of standard products based on regular tenders and regularly. Also, a daily buying and selling of shortfall quantities on spot markets with the residual position that we shall go to the power exchanges. And also the residual imbalance, they shall be also settled and managed centrally. And ideally, it should be a pan-European approach, so not only set up in Austria, also traders from abroad shall have the possibility to participate. And as mentioned, we took over that service. The sum of all grid losses in Austria is approximately 3.3 terawatt hour. That's approximately 3.5 to 4% in average. We as APG, we have around 800 gigawatt hours per year, so it's below 2% the grid losses of Austrian DSO. And currently we manage 97% of the entire grid losses in Austria. And the financial volume is approximately between 100 and 200 million euro. It's a broad range, but as you know, the prices have varied quite a lot in the past. Depending on the market price, it's the financial volume we are dealing with. But we are not only procuring the current year, we also procure up to 2 years ahead. That means finally, just the closer look this morning in my portfolio for grid losses, currently I have 250 million or something like this. So it's something. That's why you need also some very appropriate standards, risk management principles in order to deal with that amount of money. In setting up the approach and also during the operation, transparency definitely is key, because when you as a DSO offer a service for somebody else, usually it starts with a kind of mistrust, and that's why we said, well, we have nothing to hide. We will be and we are very transparent. That's why we also developed the principles and the concept together. We figured out we need to be transparent towards our NRA, towards the other system operators, and also towards our potential suppliers. That's why we report the current status of the procurement regularly to E-Control. We monitor and tell them, okay, well, who is participating, some contract details, what are the procured amounts. Towards system operators also, we submit them each and every detail of the procurement results. We provide information to them on a regular basis, and also during the setup of the principles we held several workshops where we consulted with them, and together we developed that concept. Also towards suppliers, we elaborated contracts based on EFET standards, because we don't want to develop something new again, because we wanted to go closer to the market participants and said, please help us. What is the way you are willing to make those deals with us, those business with us? And EFET contracts were the way forward. We had several workshops with EFET representatives, workshops with suppliers, and also we elaborated transparent market information, what they would like to see in order to be attractive to them. 3.3 terawatt hours sounds something, but finally we figured out, well, we really need to fight for each and every participant making deals with us in order to have a reasonable liquidity finally in our procurement scheme. So it's not reasonable, or it's not enough to say, well, I have some amount, I have something to sell, please make the business with us. You need to be very attractive to the participants. Regular reporting is also very important, again, towards NRAs, system operators and suppliers. On a monthly basis, they receive reports from us, prices, costs, participating system operators, also concluded deals as mentioned. And also for the system operators, important to mention, we also monitor the quality of their forecast and submit them individually their quality of their forecast. And also E-Control receives an entire report because they would like to monitor and compare what is the forecast error, what is the quality of the forecast of the individual DSOs. I forgot to mention, in Austria we have 140 DSOs, and so we managed up to now having 97% of the amount, not of the number of the DSOs, because there are so many additional DSOs. We simply said those last 3% would be so much effort for more or less nothing. That's why we said, okay, with 97%, we, and I guess also E-Control, is rather happy. Towards suppliers, again, they receive after each and every deal, we make with them a deal sheet information, and of course each and every detail they need to know. What is the concept of the procurement? Finally, it was not so easy convincing our CEO that, well, now we make a new business where the return more or less is neglectable, is almost not given, but simply to kind of just performing a service for other system operators, creating trust by this, but we increase our budget a lot, or our turnover a lot, better to say, with almost no associated revenue. So the key figures, they are more or less disturbed, and how can you convince then your management in order to follow such kind of approach? That's why we said, okay, we need a consistent procurement scheme, consistent risk management systems, and simply very transparent processes also within our company in order to convince the relevant people to go for that approach. Here you see as an example the profile of the grid losses for the participating TSOs and DSOs up to 400 megawatt in average for Austria. And then the idea simply is, well, okay, how to figure out which kind of standard product we can squeeze in that profile. Here's an example of some base products, and these blue bars here are somehow some big products. And the final question is, okay, which kind of product shall we then purchase, and what are the residual grid losses we need to deal with? We investigated 3 different options. We said, okay, we need to set up a portfolio management scheme. We said we can minimize the volumes, we can minimize the associated costs, or we can minimize the risk. And finally, we went for the approach of minimizing the associated risk, because we as DSO, we are no trading house. That means we don't take active positions. We only procure and purchase what we need for us and our customers, the DSOs and other system operators. But we would like to ensure that finally we minimize the associated risk of that process, and that's why we went for this conditional value of risk approach, where we really have a very close look to the associated risk and minimize those risks. So we not only look at the value at risk, we look really at the CEER. That means we really can evaluate what kind of loss might occur with this process. Also, we said, well, we need to procure based on the outcome of the market consultation of E-Control up to 2 years ahead. That's how we said we need an order strategy, procurement strategy. And then we said, okay, we will follow such kind of S-shaped procurement strategy. Here are the delivery period. Here we are 2 years ahead, and we said, okay, in this time usually the volatility and the liquidity is rather low. Close for delivery, we have a high volatility, high liquidity, And in medium term, we have medium volatility and medium liquidity. And we said, okay, let's try to procure most of the volume somewhere here in between, because here we have at least a reasonable liquidity and the medium volatility, which we assumed is a favorable principal order strategy. And based off this regime, we try to figure out what kind of products we procure then on a weekly level. The procurement process is, in brief, we receive forecast data from the DSOs. Also from our internal operation departments, we receive forecast data, and summing up, we receive the forecast data up to 3 years ahead. And based on this forecast data, we apply this portfolio management approach based on the conditional value at risk and figure out what kind of products we need to procure. Additionally, day ahead, all the system operators submit to us short-term forecast data, what more or less is the schedule for the losses for the next day. Also, we sum them up, and finally we compare what already have we procured on a long-term basis, what is the difference, and that is the amount we procure them finally on the power exchange on a daily level. Also, the associated benefit is, if you have a rather small market compared to Germany, France, whatever, it's somehow a reasonable amount you can put to your local market, to the power exchange, but there's also foster liquidity in your own market. I think I don't want to go into details here. Simply, system operators submit us the schedules for the next 3 years. We perform a portfolio management process. We consider hourly price forward curves. So we had to develop also our own hourly price forward curves, because we need the market information and a deep understanding of the market in order to ensure reasonable performance. And also, this conditional value at risk approach is a stochastic approach. It means it's not enough having one hourly price forward curve for the next 3 years ahead. So we calculate 1,000 curves per year. So together with University in Vienna, with the Institute for Mathematics, we developed a stochastic approach here for this generation of hourly price forward curves. Also, we set up risk management schemes and also other restrictions for the portfolio management process. And finally, we set up a tendering system where we procure them regularly on a weekly level, the standard product. Similar process for day ahead. For day ahead, as mentioned, we sum up the forecast data we receive on a day ahead level. We deduct what we already have procured based on standard products, and then finally we go to the power exchanges with that amount, or we have also contracts with some fallback providers if power exchange is not liquid enough, but so far we never had the case. So all the time power exchanges were liquid enough in order to fulfill our requirements. And last not least, also the scheduling. We also perform the scheduling, that it's a more or less full service package for the participating DSOs. Very important was also the settlement concept, because performing a kind of service, not only a kind of performing service for DSOs or for other system operators or transmission system operators, they really would like to have a kind of that they don't need to deal with any other hidden details, to call it in that way. That's how we said, okay, we would like to have one fixed price valid for the entire year. That can be set up for us as a kind of a tariff, and also with the deviations we as APG have to deal with. And the cost components included in the settlement price is what trades have you already realized, so we know those costs. Then we forecast the cost of the future hedges. We forecast the cost of the spot market activities. We have administrative costs, of course. We have transaction costs, power exchange costs mainly. We have forecast the cost for imbalance settlement, and we have accrued profits and losses from previous years. So that also we put forth to the new settlement price, so that we don't keep, of course, the losses or the profit for us. We only have to deal with the deviations. And finally, we really have one fixed price valid for everyone for the entire next year. And this is very comfortable, because you have an amount per month times this price, and that's it. Risk management. So risk management, as mentioned, was very important. Just a very brief overview. Usually you have to deal with market, credit and operational risks. The main factors of risk we dealing with is we look at value at risk, market risk side, also dynamic value at risk, conditional value at risk. We look at stop loss, drawdown, profit and loss, of course. Mainly, we monitor credit risk of our participants and operational risk. We really have developed very strict rule books. So, because having a vast amount of money to deal with, you need really very strict standards that you don't give too much freedom to the operators running and managing that processes. So we have a really strict monitoring also of different limits, position limits, where we look how long, how short, which kind of open positions are there, and we have a daily risk management report fully automated where I receive on a daily level, okay, what's going on here. And by the way, we have set up standards where also front, back, middle office is managed by different departments that is not a single person or a single department can control themselves. Limit concept, this is the S-shaped strategy. Also we have defined some upper and lower limits, and within those limits they can work, the operators can work, and then we monitor if compared to this strategy we are long and short, and this black line here as an example is the actual order, and this is then compared to the benchmark, to the original strategy, and then we can see how successful we are or we not have been, as an example. In the daily report, I just copied some slides. You see the same, the strategy, the S-shaped strategy is here normalized to 0. You see the actual procurement and also the limit. We see, well, okay, we are within the limits. Also, we look at position limits that depending on the delivery period, you see, okay, well, they shall be within certain limits. And also, as an example, you see the profile here, what kind of long-term products, standard products have been purchased already, and this is the residual amount which needs to be put forth to the power exchange market. Very important also, of course, IT development, because it was not to develop IT into everything on our own. That was never the goal. But my approach was, well, if we run a new business for a DSO, then at least I would like to understand what's going on there, because I don't want to have to purchase any product and then just click on a button on a daily level and having no idea what's going on. That's why we said it's a reasonable money at stake, and that's why we need to understand the processes in behind. That's why we developed, with external support, of course, our own price forecasting tool, because by that you need to look at the market, you need to understand the market, because if something is wrong here in this different curves, if you have a better understanding, say, well, okay, I don't trust it, and have a closer look to it. So we have this hourly price forward curve generation, where daily we generate 1,000 scenarios for each hour next 3 years ahead. We have our own optimization tool routine where we run the CEER process. Maybe you recognize the logo here. This is the University of St. Gallen from Switzerland. So last year they developed us that tool. We had an own developed tool, and now they again, we asked them, please benchmark again what we have done. The results were totally identical, but they developed now a system with what is more comfortable for us, so we can monitor quite rather easily what's going on there, and every operator can run it and not need to understand the optimization routines in each and every detail. And finally, also the outcomes and the product recommendation can be seen out of this process finally. Not to forget, we need also a market interface. Then we said we developed an own market interface, and we said, well, we have different products we need to procure as a DSO. And then we said, okay, it doesn't make sense if I make deals with you for several products that you need to have different logins, different tokens, different whatever, different passwords. So we developed a system where there's just one interface towards our customers, and we run grid losses processes, frequency containment reserve, automatic frequency restoration reserve, manual frequency restoration reserve, unintended deviation, everything within one system under one umbrella, and all other systems are linked to that system. As an example, the hourly price forward curve portfolio management system has close links there. We have the risk management system, which has close links to that procurement system. We have close links to the system operation as such, and of course to the settlement department. By the way, operation, settlement, risk management, market, those are different departments that you see. We have a functional, the different functions are associated to different departments in order to follow front, middle and back office functionalities. And of course on our web page you have access to those kind of systems. So the message is, it was really a lot of working behind. So it's not to, now we have a new idea, we procure for somebody of us, do a service for somebody else. You really need some thorough understanding, what are you intend to do, what kind of systems do you need, because you need really appropriate systems in order to have trustful basis, and you create trust in people for whom you perform that service, people with whom you make deals, and also to create trust for your own management that they can follow those kind of standards and principles. Last not least, experience and recommendation. Well, in principle we have a well-working concept and processes. We have benchmarked it again last year with from universities, not external universities. We can monitor that the price level based on our tendering are closely following wholesale prices, so we are slightly below or above, so on average we more or less follow the wholesale prices. Of course, further development possibilities are there. We think it over to go to fully on power exchanges, not to procure with own procurement systems this long-term product. So why not directly to go on power exchanges? And why not also to just perform purely financial hedging on power exchanges in the future? And that's what we are currently investigating, if this makes sense, if this can save costs and makes the processes even easier. In principle, that concept in particular is applicable, of course, to other DSOs. So if somebody would like a similar concept, I'm happy to share detailed experience and knowledge. We had also other DSOs visiting us where we have shown that details or more details and how the concept in details work. Nevertheless, in order to enable a competition, I would say roundabout, I wouldn't go for such kind of concept if I would have to procure less than 2 terawatt hours per year, because you need a reasonable amount per week, and if you go for tenders on a weekly level, you should not go below 5 megawatts per product, because otherwise the market simply is not interested in. So the 3 terawatt hours we have is reasonable, because as mentioned, if I observe the prices we have achieved and compared with the wholesale prices, it's rather similar. So I would say, okay, it's a reasonable liquidity, but with these 3 terawatt hours we are somehow on the edge, I would say. Transparency, as mentioned, is key. Don't forget this. It's not that we as DSO or as DSO you make something because it's your business. No, if you really purchase something, you need to have some partners, and partners is the correct word, because you need to have a common understanding, and you need to create a mutual trust. Sometimes you make mistakes. Traders made a mistake there, and then of course we managed somehow within the rules, of course, to help each other, and vice versa. Also, there's a fat finger on your side sometimes, and it's good to have a very trustful relationship and very open relationship. So involvement of market is key. And if you go for own procurement process, not power exchange driven processes, look that you can use standard processes, standard contracts. I think if it's standard contracts are highly recommendable in that case, because by that you have a vast community behind what you can attract to participate in your markets.